welcome back to the Bobby Dupre Show, the second quarter of the Bobby Dupre Show. We do it in 4 quarters, and Andrew's telling me that we got to kind of pick it up a little bit.
Roll.
And,
we're not going to finish for Friday.
I was getting ready to talk about an article that's in the Morning Advocate every Sunday, People in Business. And I looked at the pictures. There's, about 14 people's pictures here, and I saw one that, I don't know, it just stood out, and it should stand out because it's a nephew of mine's daughter. And I'm speaking of Dana Dupre. And Dana is the son of Kent and, I have it down there.
Dana. No.
Yep. Anyhow,
go ahead.
That's Cody and Wilder's granddaughter.
Correct.
And
but it's kind of funny how she resembles John's daughter, Jean.
Yeah.
I found. I see that resemblance when Jean was young.
Exactly, sure does. It stood out in the pictures. You know, naturally, I've seen her recently, and she is an attorney, and what she's featured in this article about is she has just been selected as members of the LLC, which is equivalent of partners in the firm, and it's a big firm: Gordon, Arata, McCollum, Duplantis, and Egan LLC. And they have an office right there in Lafayette also. She works in the New Orleans office, and she works in Dupre practices in oil, gas, and energy transactions, oil, gas, and energy regulatory, and oil, gas, and energy litigation section. So. Of course, her husband is also, she got married October the 19th of 2013. Now, I remember that date because I couldn't go to the wedding because it was the day before the boxing Hall of Fame and reunion in Sunset. So I had to miss it, and I had gone to, this is her second marriage. I had gone to her first marriage, and we had a blast, and they tell me it was just as good this time. Her husband is an attorney, and he's working on the BP matter. So they both in oil-related practices, and certainly want to wish her well. And I did call Cody to make sure he had seen the article, and he knew all about it. And on a death notice, a person that passed away, and I was called by his son, Ronnie Spira. I'm speaking of John L. Well, if you want to talk about John L., if you'd call him Red, then everybody knows you're talking about Red Spira. Very active man in the Plaisance, Washington community. He worked with the water system for approximately 20 years. He was the manager. And when I got the call, I was in Winfield this past weekend when Ronnie called me, and when I got through, I told Ray we were in my little Polaris Ranger, and I said, he says, who was that? It sounded like I recognized the name. I said, well, Red Spira died. He says, I met Red way back then when he was managing the water system. I guess that was the Plaisance water system. And he says, I was working with South Central Bell, so we did bump into each other quite often. Very active in the horse industry. He raised horses, bred horses, lived on a little ranch there, and I think he had divided the land up and all. And Miss Petrie, Laura Petrie, she bought a section, one portion of the land, and she has a horse breeding operation there, and I saw her at the wake. I was able to, Sunday afternoon after Mass, I was going to go around 6 o'clock to the funeral home, and literally there was no parking place. So I said, well, I like to go when I can, see some of the members of the family. So I did get to see Ronnie, and we, of course, got to knowing one of his granddaughters recently, and I'm speaking of Kelly Bork. Her mama is, let's see here, Kelly, okay, her mama is Deneen Bork, and her husband is Eddie Bork of Opelousas here. And she is a horse trainer, and I'm sure that I've talked with her, and probably act like I knew her, but
never put two and two together that the daughter's working at the office.
Was working for OPAC Financial Services. So a little bitty world, and my deepest sympathies to all of the family. Another person who died, and I had an opportunity to go to that memorial. I didn't stay for the service itself. I went where the family and friends gathered for the wake of Miss Margaret White Shoemaker. She was age 72. She was from out of town and had been living in Opelousas a number of years. Her daughter, Tara Elta, Dwayne Elta's wife, Tara, and I got to knowing Dwayne and Tara and the two boys, Devin and Jesse Elta, their two kids. And just a real nice, warm feeling. Reverend Perry Hubbs came over and he says, you probably don't recognize me. I said, come on, Reverend Hubbs, you know I'm going to recognize you. And I said, what about me? He said, well, I remember you. And we hadn't seen each other in a while, and I reminded him, I said, you know, I attended when you all had the dedication of this new building that is housed on I-49 South on the service road on the west side of the highway there. I said, I came to the dedication. Gary Beardo had invited me. He said, you got a good memory. And he says, I know you were there.
There you go.
We have some others, but we're going to come back to those a little bit later on the death side.
All right, we've got a couple sponsors too. How about Don Leger Appraisal Service? And let me tell you, if you're in the real estate business, knowing what the value of property is very important. There can be a big difference between you getting your value for a piece of property. It can be very important in you making sure you're paying the correct price for the property. You want to do it whether you're a buyer or seller, have a good appraisal service. And Don Leger has the experience in Lafayette Parish, St. Landry, St. Martin, Acadia, Evangeline, Iberia, and Vermilion parishes. And remember, he's done this for more than 30 years, this type of work. So you're getting the guy with good experience who knows the area. Because he works all around this area, he's not just some appraiser walking in off the street out of the Houston office or the New Orleans office. This is a local guy who deals with local people. He knows what the prices are for our local real estate, and also can be very discreet if you're trying to find out some value of things because you don't want to tip the buyer yet that you're interested, or if you're trying to figure this thing out before you approach your partners. Maybe you're trying to buy part of the property from your partners. Don Leger can sit with you and talk with you and get what you need.
Family of Francis found, and of course they're speaking of the little homeless, a dwarf. She was less than 4 foot tall, and she went by the name of Francis, and she died in that cold spell of about 2 weeks ago, and they could never really find out her correct last name. They wasn't sure what her real, because and couldn't find any family members. But the internet, they came up and somebody told the mother of this child, and she was aged person.
And the family was up in Idaho, I think is what I understood,
yeah,
somewhere in the Northwest.
Way up, and she had a hard life because of her size, and she had gotten married and had a child, and the child died, and it just went,
difficult life,
I guess would be a proper word to use, but they did find it, and the mother is coming, and possibly has come already for the body, and she'll be buried next to that.
It says a lot for Chief Gallo that his group, you know, this is the kind of thing that it'd be easy just to let everything sit back and not worry about it. But the fact that he still followed up and kept pushing to try to see, to give the family some closure.
Well, that, and of course, within 15, 18 hours, his department and other law enforcement agencies solved a shooting that took place here in Opelousas. So some people kind of got upset with a killing that took place in that community, and they kind of got up, and I think he went there and he just told them, give us time. You didn't see it happen. We didn't see it happen. We can't just go on what hearsay. We have to have proof before we go and start investigating, and because it hurts a person's name and recognition if they're brought in, and then even if they found that they have nothing to do with it, they still have that stigma. I wonder if he really had something to do with it.
I believe a few of the agitators in the community, people who had run-ins with the police. So you got people that have a certain agenda, you know.
Agenda, big word.
It's always a problem.
That's
with
problem.
them, they don't mind unrest with the police department, but you got to remember, the police department, that's your friend. That's your friend.
We're talking about a person that you say does a good job. I second the motion that Perry and his law enforcement office, the whole group, because it's not a one-man team. You found that out last Sunday. You heard the 2 quarterbacks that won the games. They quick to thank the whole group, the coaches, and the fans, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And we the fans of these elected officials. I see where Mr. Wilson Viator, who is the mayor of Youngsville, has been for a number of terms now, and he was a council member prior to being the mayor. He's entering his final year as mayor. He will not seek re-election. But this little community and its neighboring community of Broussard, I'm going to put them kind of together because they very, very fast moving, growing communities, and the oil industry has got a lot to do with it, and they're taking advantage of it, and they're building some nice sports complex. They realize to help these kids, you've got to have something positive for them to do to burn that energy rather than walk in the streets.
There you go. How about Piggly Wiggly? Go by your local Piggly Wiggly. We were talking about them just a couple minutes ago with, we got Joey Quibido, who's involved with What's Cooking here on KDCG as well. And don't forget about Piggly Wiggly for your catering type needs there at Piggly Wiggly South. 2 locations in Opelousas, on the north end of town and the south end of town. Also a location in beautiful downtown Simsport, not far from Canadaville in Simsport. Yep. They can get everything for you if you're looking for any kind of meats, already seasoned meats. This time of the year, of course, smoked meats because you're making gumbos go by. They got all the different types of roux. I was in there the other day. They even have the dry roux if you're worried about too much oil being bad, maybe cholesterol type stuff. You know, low cholesterol diets. They've got all that there as well. That's Piggly Wiggly.
7 scams retirees fall for all too often. Senior citizens are known to have stashed away a little bit of money, and these scammers, as they're referred to, kind of know how to go about calling you and kind of sweet talking to you, and they'll have a scheme, advance fee for the lottery, grandparent scam, cash fraud, computer scams, timeshare scams, homeowner scams, medical scams. All of this is taking place right now in every community in the world. Sure. And the internet, of course, gives these fraudsters a way to get the information on all of us.
There's always a way.
There's a way.
And in the stores too, not just on the internet, but you physically go in a store, and we saw one of the large department stores had a big compromise, and that was actually people going to the store.
Only 40 million.
Only 40.
There was more than that. They found out it's more than that. Then there's another big one.
The final numbers I saw was 1 out of every 4 people in the United States would be at risk.
At risk.
At one store.
Dan Burkhalter, who works part-time for the District Attorney Earl Taylor's office here in Opelousas. He called me to tell me about this article. I said, I've already got it for the program, Dan, but thanks, Dan. Dan is open to discussing with any group, small, large, it makes no difference, to go over these in more detail. And it's very important that you don't give out some of that information, like your date of birth, your mama's name. In most of these important documents,
your mother's
maiden name, and so that's not too easily found. So please keep that in mind.
And that's all we got for this segment. We're going to see you folks on the other side of 1 minute.